and welcome to our latest episode of Make It Sunday. Can you believe it is the first Sunday of October? So I don't know how many of these have done. This might be episode 4 or 5, but for those of you who are new to my channel, it's Sarah from Funky Fossil here, and we do a weekly kind of inspiration video demo to try and encourage you to have a play with your stamps, your stencils, your dies, get them out of your stash and create something. Sundays are a perfect day for crafting. So what I'm going to be creating with today is our new stamps from our Dark Alchemy collection. I'm going to be using our Starry Spiral die that also came out at the same time, and I'm going to be using an older die, which is just a simple peony flower, so kind of an outline die with a solid base. And I'm going to do a fab deal on these this week as part of our Sunday Makers bundle. So there'll be the usual 20% off these two, and when you buy that bundle I'll also be adding this die as well for free. So do check that out if you want to create along with me and make something similar. But the main purpose of these videos is just to give you ideas of things that you might want to do in your journal or on your cards. Now I'm going to do a journal page because I've been really loving filling my journal over the past few weeks, and in fact I'm thinking I may not be able to get another page into my fabulous A5 journal. I'm kind of it's getting pretty full and starting to struggle in terms of opening the pages, so I might have to break out a new journal, and we'll do a flip through of this one at some point in the future. The ring bound journals are great for, oh, look at that, I've got a magnet on the end. The ring bound journals are great for really kind of enabling you to kind of work flexibly within them. They lay flat, but also of course you then do get a finite spine width in terms of how much they can accommodate. So I think I'm going to go in this journal today. Say it's another of our A5 journals, hardback cover with lovely mixed media paper. I already have some pages done in this, so I've already made a start on it. So I'm not breaking out a brand new journal today. A lot of this is using some of the fab products from Zinsky Art that's also in our shop. Excuse me. So I think I will be creating in here. And I've got some ideas. I really want to use alcohol ink this week because I've been playing with it quite a lot and it's my current obsession. And I thought these bottles would be the perfect opportunity to kind of have them coloured with alcohol inks and on acetate, and give you that fabulous translucent look of having kind of liquids and magical potions in the bottles. So that's my starting premise. That's what's got me going with this page. And because I'm wanting to kind of work with the alcohol inks and create that look of magical potions, I also want to use our star die as a way of kind of creating the effect of that kind of potion escaping from the bottle. So what I've done ahead of time is literally cut that star die out of a sheet of paper, which I'll be layering on top of a coloured background. So you can see the kind of effect you get with it, and it's a fabulous one because it cuts into your surface, and you get that design left embedded in there. And of course you get all these fabulous stars as the kind of the waste that you can use for shaker cards and lots of other ideas. So it's a great kind of two for this die. So that's as far as I have got in kind of my planning stages. I do want to, as I say, create some alcohol ink bottles. So let's make a start with that. And to do that, I have got some, where have I got it? I've got it here. I've got some heat emboss acetate. So I've got Creative Expressions, and I have tested this week, and this definitely does take the kind of heat gun and embossing powder. So I'm going to be using this for stamping my potion bottles onto, because then I can gold heat emboss them and give myself a really luxurious look. So let me get some. I have cut some out previously. So my invisible acetate here on the desk, and let me get. What I'm thinking is if I heat emboss the potion bottles first, then that gives me a better idea when I use the alcohol inks on the back of the acetate of what kind of effect I'm getting. So, and also I'm not sure, I don't think it would be a good idea to cover the acetate with alcohol ink and then try and use embossing, use a heat gun on it. I'm just not entirely convinced that the alcohol ink on the acetate would like that. So I'm going to stamp first and then we'll use the alcohol inks behind it. So I've already got two of the potion bottles in my stamping platform. I think a stamping platform is best for this because obviously acetate is quite slippy, and so I think if you try and go in with an acrylic block, you've got more risk of the kind of the stamp moving on the surface. So I'm hoping this is going to give me a nice crisp impression. And I could put some actually I will. No, I won't. I could put some anti-static powder on this because obviously the oil from my fingers could very easily have translated onto this acetate and that would show through. But remember, we're going to cut these bottles down, so I'm not too worried if I get embossing powder around the bottles on this occasion, because we are going to be cutting them out as images in their own right. This one's blue because I used some StazOn on it. I don't know, it's probably going to transfer onto my my ink pad, so I use some StazOn on it, and of course StazOn is one of those inks that does actually stain your stamp but doesn't affect its future performance. You can kind of clean, there are stamp cleaners to clean it off with, and I'm sure I've seen or heard people say if you use StazOn a lot it can ultimately kind of damage the stamp, but I've never had an issue with it yet, but I don't use it a huge amount either. So you can see I'm just pushing down both of these. I'm pushing these down, I'm hoping to get a good impression first time because I know this acetate is going to stick to these stamps and lift with them despite my magnets, so it won't be that easy to reposition them. Can you see what I mean? Oh yeah, it is, it's lifting. It's just the stickiness of the ink and the nature of acetate means that those two things are going to hang on to each other. Right, let's put some gold embossing powder on this. Let me get something to catch the embossing powder. Would have been good to have thought of that at the beginning. Just going to get a bit of card. Now I've got to find the acetate again. There we go. So until we get this embossing powder on, it'll be hard to know how good a stamp we've got. So I've got some gold. Have I got any polished? Yes, I have. Polished gold, super fine from Wow. I mean, all their gold embossing powders are gorgeous, but I am particularly liking the polished one at the moment. It gives a really high shine. So let's see. Just going to do one at a time, and you'll be able to see all my fingerprints on this. To be fair, I had just put hand cream on, so that wasn't the brightest. Look at that, you can see my fingerprints. Bonkers. I don't think those smudges are going to affect our finished look because, as I say, we're going to cut the bottles out, and in terms of the kind of project we're doing with the alcohol inks and this kind of magical feel, some gold speckles are not going to do any harm to the overall look and feel of the page. But yeah, definitely a top tip. Let me put some white underneath this and you'll just see what I mean. Definitely a top tip to make sure, particularly with vellum and acetate. I mean, obviously you could wipe it away, but it's literally picked up my fingerprints there. So use your anti-static bag and try not to use hand cream just before you go live. I'm just going to let it go. So I'm thinking, although this is heat embossable acetate, I suspect it's still going to be not that heat tolerant. So I'm putting my heat gun on a low setting rather than the high. I'm going to make sure it's at full heat before we apply it. And I'm going to try and do this quite gently so we don't get it buckling. So you really want to keep that gun moving as quickly as you can, because these are quite big stamp images, so that heat gun is going to be on that acetate for a little while. You see. So yeah, I think I would definitely go with the slower heat rather than the jet. So you can see again all my fingerprints there, but it is a gorgeous finish with that polished gold on the acetate. So this, I found this Creative Expressions acetate is a really good one. What a mess. Right, none of that will matter in a minute. So I've got my 2 bottles that we're going to want to use our alcohol inks on. I'm going to cut them down the middle. Again, we want to try and be close to the area that we want to colour with the inks. And the other thing that I want to use my alcohol inks on in compiling this little composition is the base of that peony flower. You know, the flower that I was showing you at the beginning? So it has 2 parts, the base and the outline. I want to have a base in acetate that I've coloured with alcohol inks, and then we can put the die cut outline over the top of it. I'm wanting to go for quite a delicate look here in kind of purples and blues and golds. So I have already die cut, I have die cut the solid, can you see that? The solid part of the die out of acetate. It's not a heavyweight acetate, and this is a solid, quite a simple shape to cut. So sometimes delicate dies don't like cutting out of something like acetate because it's obviously a plastic, but something that is a reasonably solid, quite a stable shape, you can normally die cut. Now let me think. Let me put each of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, this is Yupo paper, just because I thought it would, obviously it works, Yupo works nicely with alcohol inks. Let me get both of those out. And I'm turning these over, so the embossing, the embossed side is going to be face down. We're wanting to work on the back of these images. Embossed down. Right. Now, the colours that I thought would work nicely with this are blues and purples. So use whatever colours appeal to you. I've just put a colour combination together that I think will convey that sense of magical potions. And I think these 3 colours, we'll see how these combine. I've got purple twilight, pistachio and indigo. I've got a blending tool with a felt. So this is a kind of Ranger sell these, and you'll have seen these with the foams for the for ink blending. The felts typically are better for taking your inks because they don't seem to dry out as quickly or absorb as much ink, so they're not quite as wasteful. This week I didn't have any of the felt, so I was using the foams, and I found I had to keep replenishing the ink really quickly because it was all just soaking into the foam. The felt doesn't do that quite so quickly. So I'm just going to put a couple of dots of colour onto this felt. These are quite strong colours, the indigo and the purple, so this might give me quite a dark look, we shall see. So I thought I'd lighten it up with a bit of pistachio. Just really dotting these on at random, because when we apply them to the acetate, you can keep agitating, or not agitating, rotating rotating your felt, so you don't get a repeating pattern. And of course, as you go back over the surface, then the inks continue to blend and react with each other. So I love doing this because it's just a quick way to get really kind of interesting effects and looks on your images. I might need to add a little bit more. I think I will. Again, there's no need to completely replicate where you put your drops, because it's not going to, you're not trying to create a specific pattern. And there are loads of things you can do with alcohol inks. And obviously if you use something like Yupo paper, which is a synthetic paper, and you get your kind of alcohol, your rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol on them, there's so many fantastic effects you can create in background. So this is a kind of really quick and basic way of getting an alcohol ink finish, but there's lots of amazing videos there on YouTube with people doing really cool things. So let's turn this around and see how this is looking. At the moment it looks like a smudgy mess to put against the white, but can you see? Looks really, really cool. I might up the purple factor a little bit. I think this blue's taken over. So I'm just topping up the purple on the felt, none of the other colours. Alcohol inks push each other out of the way when they're reapplied. And that's one of the nice things about it as well. You know, you can kind of continue working on a surface until you're entirely happy with what you've got, because the alcohol inks will just keep reacting. Or if you're not happy with how something is working out, then say you can start moving it with your isopropyl or your blending solution, and say continue until you're happy. And it dries super quickly too. So I think these two are going to look really cool. Let me just get my flower on there as well while we've got the surface and we've got the felt. So I don't know how. Yeah, there's still plenty on there. It is super addictive. So 2 bottles there, and that alcohol ink is already dry. 2 bottles and a floral shape, which we can add the outline to. If I missed a bit at the top, I might have missed a bit. So what I'm going to do next, off camera, is cut out my 2 bottles, and then of course we've got acetate. So the next thing we'll need to think about is how we're going to adhere these to our journal page, and how we're going to give them some dimension and make sure that they don't get too lost, because obviously they're quite a delicate colour with the alcohol up behind the acetate. So let's think about how we're going to layer these up. But I'll do some cutting out and I'll be back in just a sec. Right, so I've cut out my potion bottles, and I have adhered the overlay, the kind of outline die, onto our alcohol ink flower as well. So that looks great, doesn't it? I've used some kind of dull gold cardstock, but that just really gives it beautiful definition. I did go ahead and do a 3rd bottle because I wanted something that had a slightly darker value to these two, which is slightly richer purple. I think I probably put some eggplant in there to give it that richer shade. And then also what I have done off camera is, I think actually earlier this week, I did this alcohol ink background. I like it, but I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. And I thought it'd be perfect as the background behind our starry spiral to tie in with our alcohol ink potion bottles. So if you've got backgrounds like this, if you use with either your sprays or inks or your alcohol inks, then certainly don't discard them, because once you put them on top of or underneath a die cut, or you die cut them yourself, then you can completely transform them, and I think that's going to tie in nicely. So let me just, I don't want to stick it down just yet because I want to do some inking and stamping onto the to the page itself, but we can just cut this down Make sure I don't get to a point where I can't actually have all of it with an alcohol background behind it. Looks good. So I'll just trim that down now. Of course I've got this left over which will work for another one. So that's going to give us some colour behind our starry spiral. But let's put some colour onto the page before we start putting our potion bottles on. I'm going to try really hard, guys, not to make this video as long as last week's, which was a bit of an epic production. This one should be much simpler. I'm not planning on any little hidden cubby holes or pockets or flaps, it's just the page. So let me get some colours that I know I'm going to coordinate with the palette that we've already got going on. I've got some peacock feathers, I've got some dusty concord, salvage patina, which is a lovely light turquoise, and villainous potion, which is quite a dark colour. So I'm going to add colour around the page, which is my initial step a lot of the time when I'm just trying to decide how to pull things together. And let's start with the lightest colour. I can't see a brush with something like salvage patina on it, so I'm going to use just one that's obviously had some shaded lilac, so if those two merge on the page it won't cause us any difficulties. And as you've seen plenty of times with my blending brush, all I'm doing is taking that white edge away from the page, and kind of can be quite generous with this lightest colour. I do think I want to keep this page a little bit lighter towards the centre, because obviously we want our what have I got there? Oh, sorry, I thought I'd actually got alcohol ink on my page, but it was just a bit of the die cut. Yeah, we want our alcohol ink bottles to shine, and obviously they're going to shine to best effect if they're kind of sat against a bright background. If I made this background now all a dark purple colour, then the value of having those fantastic kind of marbled alcohol inks behind the acetate would get a bit lost. So you do want them to be able to pop against something pale. So my bottles are going to go here because obviously I want the spiral to look like it's emerging from there. So we've got some salvage patina down. Let's be a bit more confident now with our peacock feathers, slightly stronger turquoise. What I tend to do initially is not necessarily go as far into the page, so I'm using quite a big brush here, so I'm not worried about having massive amount of control of where I put my colour, but I'm not letting the brush travel as far into the page. I'm going to be enhancing that edge rather than taking the peacock feathers right the way into the page. And I often, when I'm doing this, I often go backwards and forwards a few times, so I might now go back in with the salvage patina and just pull that in a bit more until I feel like I've got the kind of level of shading coming in that I want. And of course I've got ink on my glass mat, so quite often I can be pulling that in. Just mindful that I want something down here which still gives me white space, and I feel like I should be pulling in some purple. Maybe do a bit of dusty concord just to tie in with the bottles themselves, so let's do that as well. I've got only my big brushes here with purples on, so I'm gonna, what's this one? This little brush here with the looks like it's had something like salvage patina on. Again, a bit like I was saying earlier, it won't really cause me any major difficulties if those two colours mix and merge, because they're the colours that are in the palette. So now, because I've got a smaller brush, I'm being quite a lot more purposeful about how much colour now goes onto the page. And if I'm not happy, or if I don't feel it looks blended enough, then I will go back in with the peacock feathers just to soften anything that looks a little bit too splotchy. This is going on nicely. And I've not gone back to my ink pad, so I've kept going back to what I tapped off on the glass mat initially, just to avoid over inking my brush, because this is a contrast colour or a stronger colour. I don't want to suddenly put more of that onto the page than I intended. So without putting any more ink on my turquoisey brush, I can just pull that over the top, and it may not come across on camera, but it just does make that blend look a little bit more natural. I'm quite liking some ink going onto my spiral there. So just pulling that in. Right, I'm going to leave that there, that inking up. It's already kind of made the page feel a little bit more thought about, but let's add a little bit more mark making in the background as well. So I've got options here. I could go with stencils. I could go with a field note stencil, add a bit of text. In fact, I think I will. Yes, I think I'm going to do that, and I think I'm going to go with the kind of celestial symbols from, that one's Drink Me, Cast a Spell, the other A5 stamp set from the Dark Alchemy collection. I think I'm focusing mainly, you can see this is not a clean stencil, I don't think that'll be a problem. I'm going to focus mainly on the script part of this stencil, and I think I'm going to use the peacock feathers. Again, this is about building a little bit of a detail in the background without losing some sense of the airiness that the white space will give us. So I'm really not being heavy, or not putting a lot of ink on here. See whether making any difference. It's very, very faint. I don't know if you can see it. Bear with me up. So I've got my head in to view. I'll try and put a bit more on, just in the interests of, you can see it. I don't know how much you can see on camera. Can you see that? Just there, isn't it? As I often like to do, let's go opposite corners. I'm not wanting to go too kind of rectangular, so stronger in the corner, and then just letting that ink or the brush travel around the rest of it, but in a much lighter with hardly any pressure, so it kind of fades out. Maybe it's a bit clearer there for you. Let's add a little bit of stamping, and then we can stick down our focal points and see if anything else is needed. So I do love this stamp from the Cast a Spell stamp set. Now again, I'm going to stamp this with a Distress Oxide, because this is background stamping that is not intended to draw the eye specifically. It's just really intended to give that impression of layers. So I think I'm going to go with peacock feathers again. So it's all very much tone on tone. And this is already a fragment image. It's kind of naturally breaks off and has a kind of uneven end. So that makes it really nice for backgrounds, because you're not going to worry about anything looking too blocky. And if you don't catch all of it, it equally isn't going to matter. Well, that's nice. So you can see, even though we've used peacock feathers almost 3 times there, still that stamping does stand out because it's probably been the strongest application of ink that we've used. I do like to work in opposite corners, but not necessarily have the same amount of the image showing on both corners. Great. Right. I could carry on stamping and stenciling for a little while longer on this, but again, I am trying not to make this too long. Give myself a quick wipe down here, and then we'll adhere some of the elements to the page. So if I think I've got my main background done without much more stamping or stenciling required, then let's stick our alcohol ink background to the Starry Spiral. I'm going to do that by putting the glue around the die shape and into the middle here, so all of it is stuck down. This would be a great die if you're doing it in either a journal or onto a card where you put some 3D foam underneath it, because then you'll get some real look of depth. But I'm not wanting to bulk out my journal too quickly. So, got a little bit of time with the wet glue. Oh, I really like how that looks. Oh, cool. Right. So, I think I'm gonna put 2 bottles on the page and layer them up, because you'll get a really interesting effect where you've got the 2 layers of alcohol ink over the top of each other, and also because I just think this flower kind of adds a beautifully mysterious touch to it all, and if I put it there, it's going to make the connection from these images to the spiral, but it's not too heavy. I like that. I think that's going to work. The nice thing about these, I was initially worried a little bit about how I was going to adhere them down, but as you'll see, you've got plenty of space with this gold embossed areas are of course opaque, so you can apply your glue to those areas, trying to see where they are. This alcohol ink's quite dark, without worrying, just very sparingly. This is not heavy, it's not a heavy item, so it's not going to need an awful lot of glue. Sorry, I don't know if you can see. There we go, that's enough. So really I'm just hoping that where I've applied the glue is where the gold heat embossing is, and because this is going on what is effectively pretty much a white background, then that beautiful alcohol ink is going to really kind of sing behind the acetate. Now this one doesn't have quite as much solid gold, so I don't know if you can see, I'm just my eyesight is such that I'm wanting to hold it close to me. A few touches where I can see the line art. Now I know I need to tuck my flower underneath this, but I'll put it down first and then we'll decide where the flower will go. So if I put this one to the front, that gold heat embossing is going to just, from the bottle below, is going to shine through. Now with the flower, obviously I've got the line of the die cut. So that will give me enough contact points for the glue. And Let me just see if I can lift this up again. I can't lift anything up with my nails at the moment, I don't know why. It's not as if they're long. There we go. Can you see? I don't know if you can see those little spots of purple. Just shows the alcohol ink will reactivate with the glue. Just hold that top bit down a little bit. How cool is that looking? Right. What else do we need? So I'm only going to put 2 bottles on. I was thinking about putting a third. Put a third on? No, I don't think. I want to cluster them here. So all I'm going to do to finish this page, well, there's 2 things I'm going to do. Is I'm going to stamp a sentiment and also put some gold splatters to finish. So I'm going to use Your Magic Wisely from the, I think that's the Cast a Spell stamp set. I'm hoping this is clear enough of the card. If it isn't and it catches, I think it will go down there, and it catches, then I will be able to just stamp this on separately onto another piece of card and adhere it. You can do either or. I never worry too much about stamping directly if I know I can actually cover it up if it doesn't give me a good impression. However, because I'm going to heat emboss that, I'm going to leave it for a few seconds while this ink is all nice and dry, and we're not going to have a risk of that gold embossing powder sticking where we don't want it. So what I'm going to do off camera to finish this page is stamp and heat emboss my sentiment and add some gold splatters to finish the page, and I will share with you a finished image of this page in situ in my journal. But I hope you like the overall idea of using your acetate and your alcohol inks to give you really interesting effects, creating your own kind of embellishments with dyes and acetate, and of course using that alcohol ink then behind that spiral to really complete that magical look. So you've got that colourway really kind of moving up the page nicely. Bit of subtle background with our inks and stencils and stamps, as you've seen many times before, but I think that page comes together really well. And blues and purples, it's not my usual colour combination, so I don't know what's come over me. But I hope you've enjoyed this video and feel inspired to try some of these ideas for yourself. Please do like and subscribe if you don't already. I'm back every Sunday with fresh inspiration, and I hope you can join me. I shall see you again then. Bye for now.